Welcome. You're listening to This Leader, the podcast. If you lead people and are seeking the transformational, high-impact secrets that will lead to greater joy and fulfillment in your work, will optimize your team performance, and will help you create a happy, highly productive workplace, then you are this leader and you're in the right place. I'm your host, Claire Laughlin, and each week my guests and I will explore the mindsets, techniques, and actionable strategies that will help you build the career, team, and organization of your dreams. Because I believe no one should have to suffer in a dysfunctional workplace. Let's get started. Have you ever said yes to some opportunity, like a promotion, a project, a role? Not because you necessarily wanted it, but because you thought you should. Or you simply realized you could, so you did. And you're probably good at things and you're a hard worker, so opportunities keep presenting themselves. And each time a new opportunity comes along, you think, well, I can do this, so I should say yes. I can, so I should. Before you know it, you're 10 years into a career path driven by external expectations rather than internal clarity. You're achieving things that look impressive from the outside, but inside, you've never really paused long enough to ask yourself, is this what I actually want? Is this aligned with what truly matters to me? You're stuck in that gap between following your competence, which is high, and your heart. So my guest today navigated this exact tension at the highest levels, and she did it very well. Today, you'll meet Stephanie Sonnenshine, who became CEO of one of the most influential organizations in her whole region in California, an organization with a $1.5+ billion budget and serving over 440,000 members during her tenure. But here's what's really instructive about her story. She never set out to be a CEO. That wasn't the goal. She was driven by deep commitment to the organization's mission and the members it served, and by her values of integrity and service. When the opportunity presented itself, she stepped up, not for status or achievement, but because she really believed in the work. And she knew she could help navigate a critical transition. She has no regrets about that choice. But what she learned through that experience, and what she now helps other leaders understand, is the critical importance of slowing down and knowing why you're saying yes. Like, are you pursuing something because it's what you think you should want, or because it genuinely aligns with what matters to you? There's a profound difference there. Stephanie is a friend, and we've had many conversations on wonderful hikes through the forest about this tension between achievement and fulfillment. Today, we're exploring how to recognize whether you're being driven by internal clarity or external expectations, and how slowing down your decision-making process helps you connect with what you actually want. 'Cause here's what's important. Sometimes the right answer is the big promotion, the CEO role, the visible achievement, if it aligns with your deeper values and it meets a need for you, and if it truly energizes you. And sometimes the right answer is stepping into something completely different. The key is knowing the difference. So if you also listened to my recent episode with Sherry Thomas about strategic rebranding, this conversation is a great complement to that. First, right, getting clear on what's driving you from the inside, and then making strategic moves that align with who you actually are. So let's dive in. Here's my conversation with my guest, Stephanie Sonnenshine. Welcome, Stephanie. Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Claire.
I'm really excited for this conversation. I want to explore with you some of the conversations that we've had, on wonderful hikes through the forest, about the tension and the drive that can happen when you are kind of a hyperachiever. And I call upon you for this, Stephanie, because you are a friend who has achieved great things. And I'll just say out loud, we got started working together just before you became the CEO of one of the most influential organizations in this county where we live, with, over $1.5 billion budget at the time and over 440,000 members at the time. And this is a significant achievement. And then we've also talked along the way, and you've sort of identified yourself as sometimes being in that lane of hyperachievement or overachievement. And so I really just want to talk that through with you because so many of my listeners are people who strive for big things. And I want to talk about what's happening on the inside for that, right? And so when did you kind of first realize that your drive for achievement or your relationship with achievement might have been a little different than other people's drive or relationship with achievement?
Yeah, it's such an interesting question about when. I don't think that there's a moment that I reflect on where there was some clarity that I had a different experience with achievement. And even as I heard you do the introduction and describing my most recent organizational role and describing that as an achievement, I don't have a relationship with the work in that way. Like defining it as an achievement
Okay.
isn't a way that I would describe that. What I am aware of and what I think I was aware of when I was in that job, or, like I went to law school and practiced law for a while. And there are people that have external perceptions of sort of status oriented positions that have a reaction to that felt disconnected to me
Really?
from myself. Yeah. So I don't know that there was like a moment where I thought I was different than others, but what I observed was other people's reaction
Right.
or thoughts about things were different than how I felt about the roles.
Interesting. Can you explain that a little bit more? Go a little bit deeper with that. Like, how would people respond to that kind of gave you pause for a minute? Like, that's an interesting way of thinking about it.
Yeah. I think like people that you meet or are, socializing with. And my approach when I was in a CEO role was always to say, oh, I work for this organization.
Right.
And there'd frequently be someone that would say, oh, you're the CEO of that organization.
Got it.
And that was a really important piece of information from some people's perspectives. And to me, it was the work I did in the organization that I was at, but I didn't recognize it as a status. But it wasn't an achievement in my mind.
Okay.
I think the connection and the thing I'm learning more about as I've stepped away from that kind of a role and I'm doing consulting and coaching is that for me, it was more about like the drive.
Yes.
The connection and the focus was on the drive, on the effort,
Yes.
and less so the status that it conveyed.
That sounds incredibly healthy to me.
Well, sure. Except for I think that what happens is, for me at least, is I got really engaged in the drive and the working hard and the pushing.
Okay.
And maybe didn't think about what was it that I actually wanted. What did I actually want to be doing? Where did I actually want to be putting all of that energy? Because it gets caught up in this cycle of achievement. So while I'm saying I'm not attached to this status, I definitely was attached to the idea of working really hard and delivering results and progressing.
Right.
But I never had like an end goal in mind. It's not like I thought ever, oh, I'm going to be a CEO. Never would I have thought that.
That's my end goal. Right.
Yeah, nope, that wasn't my goal at all.
Right.
And yet I found myself there.
Okay. So you found yourself there because of your deep kind of commitment to doing the work, taking the next step, just driving forward.
Driving forward. Absolutely. And I think driving forward, being of service, helping, doing the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah, all of those things really pushed me along in my career.
Right. So in your role right now as a consultant and as a coach, are you encountering others? Are you working with, and obviously no names, keep confidentiality strong here, but like, are you working with other people where you notice that same kind of drive, just like forward momentum in that way? Or people who don't?
I think both. I think it's really interesting because, when you're coaching people, they're coming into coaching for all different reasons, but consistently people are looking to develop their leadership ability, whether it serves themselves as an individual in this space or whether it's going to produce results for their organization.
Right.
And so that idea of kind of calibrating your internal effort towards an outcome, I think is really present in any of those coaching engagements.
Right. Okay.
And sometimes people are just trying to figure it out. Like they feel a pressure or they feel a drive, but it's not directly connected to a clearly articulated goal.
Sure.
And so they're trying to gain that clarity. Like, what is it that's pushing me? What is it that's causing me to have this experience in my work? And then the opposite could be true too. Someone has a very specific goal, but they can't seem to find the path to get there.
Interesting.
And so they need to kind of explore their behaviors and their skills and think about what would be the steps to put them on that path
Yeah.
to achieve that goal. In both situations, it's about self awareness, I think.
Yeah, because I'm wondering about how about questioning the goal? Like, why is this goal important? What does the inner voice tell us about why we are in hot pursuit of whatever is next or the drive forward?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is such an important question. And I think for me, when I was in a CEO role and towards the end, when I decided to transition out of a CEO role, that idea of like why and what was something I thought about a lot and learned a lot about this idea of, just because you can do something, just because you're capable doesn't mean you should.
Say more about that.
Yeah, just because you're capable of doing something doesn't mean that you need to dedicate your entire professional life to it.
Right.
Just because I was capable of being in that CEO role didn't mean that I needed to spend the next 20 years of my life doing that work.
Right.
And so I did make a change. I also think there's a related kind of like parallel lane there to explore, which is just because you think you should or just because someone says you should doesn't mean you should. Right. You really have to examine, like, I can do something. Should I do it? And then what's that should about?
Yeah. How do we develop that voice? What's been your path toward developing more clarity about that? Because I know that leaving a post like that, leaving an appointment like that is a hard decision.
Yeah. For me, I can only speak to me, but I do think it's about developing that self awareness of, what is your motivation? What is your motivation? Are you pursuing something because it's really where you want to be and what you want to be doing? Is it work that really energizes you and lights you up? Or is there something else there? Is it more of a should? Is it serving something else? And then deciding, like, it's fine to stay in something that's kind of in the should lane. There's lots of different reasons we decide to do stuff in life, right? There's lots of reasons that we pursue work or positions, employment. And I think just having greater awareness about like what your motivation is and why you're choosing it lets you make decisions and kind of assess the consequences of those decisions. I think a big theme for me over the past couple of years as I've shifted into this consulting space and in a coaching space is this idea like nothing's without consequence, positive or negative. So you can make a choice. And I think being able to see what the consequence of that choice would be, and then really spend some time deciding whether you can accept this consequence or would you prefer a different one? Because there's always a consequence. There's always some outcome from what you do.
So was that part of the path that helped you eventually make the switch? I'm very curious about how you got in touch with that inner voice that supported you and when you said to yourself, okay, I'm here, I've done this, I'm capable of this, and yet now I know I'm ready to make a change. How did you get in touch with that?
Well, I think I went into that role, like I said before, never having envisioned myself as being a CEO. I wasn't on a CEO track. It wasn't something I was actively pursuing. I was in another executive role that I really enjoyed. It was going well. And the opportunity came present. And so I went into the CEO role with some very specific goals, which was really about transitioning this organization that I had been working in for quite a long time, whose mission I really deeply believed in, and whose members I felt very strongly about providing services for, and staff that I had a great deal of respect for. It was about making sure that all of those different stakeholders to this organization, survived and thrived through a big transition. And there was transitions, obviously, in the CEO leadership. There was transitions in the policy environment. And I knew as the organization was contemplating the next leader that if I didn't put my hat in the ring and then we got someone whose leadership I wasn't confident in, I would be very disappointed in myself. So that was really the driver for me getting into the role. And then, I went into the role and then the pandemic hit. So, of course, it was a different kind of challenge than I had anticipated. Maybe making the work more meaningful than I had thought it would be, kind of surviving that experience in the space that we were in. And so that was motivating. And, I didn't have a vision for myself after the job because I hadn't envisioned myself going into that job.
Sure. It's not like part of some master plan.
There was no master plan, right? It was the next logical step that made sense in the context of my life at the time.
It presented itself at the time, right?
It presented itself and I was prepared and I believed myself to be capable, and who wouldn't do that, right? You should do that. If you're able, you should.
That I need to talk to you about. Because as you were talking about that, Stephanie, I was thinking to myself, yes, the opportunity presented itself. Yes, you care deeply about the organization and all the stakeholders and the success of the organization, all those things being true. I could imagine another person being in that same set of circumstances that would say to themselves, and that doesn't mean that I need to do it,
Right.
that someone else will do it. Like, I'm going to trust that someone else will take the helm, and it may not be what I would do, but it'll be fine and I will go with the punches. Like, what is the call? What was the deep call to you that said, I need to do this? I need to do this.
Well, I think the healthy call, or maybe not, it would be interesting to see other people's responses to that. But I think the healthy call was something that you just touched on, which is I did not believe that were somebody else in the role and were they to be leading in a way that I didn't fully agree with or endorse, that I could get behind it if I hadn't tried.
Okay.
Like to not try and have someone else come in and then be not agreeing with the way they were leading, I knew I would have a problem and I didn't want to leave the organization. I was really committed to the organization. And so knowing that I was in that space, I put my hat in the ring and pursued the role. So I think that was really a driver for me was, it wouldn't be in line with my values. I highly value integrity. I know that word gets thrown around all the time, but I appreciate that word and I like the word for the fullness that it conveys. Like that idea of integrity is completion and wholeness, and that idea of showing up the same everywhere you are in every interaction. And I couldn't see myself, following in integrity if I didn't agree, if I hadn't tested it. So I needed to go through that, right, to accept the outcome. So I did. And then I was in the role. Yeah.
So I guess technically speaking, you could have just thrown your hat in and not have, gotten the role.
Yeah.
And if that had happened, you'd be in a different space. I don't want to push on this too hard, but I just think that there's so many people out there who would say to themselves, wow, that job really needs to be done. I hope we get someone good. You know what I mean? Like, would remove themselves from that last step that you were compelled to take, which is, and I need to do this. I need to step into this. I need to.
Well, one thing that I know about myself is that I really don't enjoy regretting. I don't like that feeling. And I have a few key decisions in my life, like a really small list of things that I really regret.
Yeah.
And they're things I didn't do.
Interesting. Like opportunities you didn't pursue?
Yes. And so I think what I'm learning, and it's taking me a long time, feels like a long time. I think I'm like a late bloomer, but I feel like I'm really learning to trust that like sense of, do I think I'll regret this? What would I regret more, trying it or not trying it? And I think what I'm finding is the not trying are those situations, the not doing, the not giving it a chance where I regret. And it's taken me a long time to trust that. But again, I think that goes back to that idea of like, can you sit with self-knowing? Can you know yourself so that you can use that knowing to help you make decisions so that you can kind of accept the consequences?
How have you developed that self-knowing?
I would say I'm a huge proponent of coaching. I had the opportunity throughout my leadership career of working with two really effective and skilled coaches that helped me pause and listen to myself.
Mm-hmm.
A really good coach is so disciplined about not telling, making a transition from a leader to a coach. Like it really is a deep skill that effective coaches have, where you're able to sit and create space and let someone say something and let them hear and listen to themselves so that they can make decisions. And so I think using coaching
Yes.
to explore what that means in a professional sense. And then for me, because I think a lot of this, and we've talked about this before, some of this comes from my family of origin and how I grew up. And so there's some personal issues that I've worked on through therapy. So I'm also a huge proponent of people engaging in therapy. And I think particularly for people in leadership roles to really give yourself space to think about what are your professional goals and what is your self-awareness about how you show up and how that supports your goal achievement, which is the coaching side. And then what are the things you're struggling with that you need a therapeutic intervention to just support you in? I think there's value in doing both. And so that's helped. And it's an ongoing, probably lifelong journey for me.
That's so great. So, has there ever been a time along this path where you've really noticed that your commitment, you have this personal drive, this personal commitment to taking advantage of those opportunities? Have you ever found that influences the way you might evaluate somebody else's choices?
Yes. It's interesting. I think I definitely hear it personally. I hear from my husband on occasion that I might push a little bit too hard or have too high of expectations. And then I do think professionally, like I could push. And at the same time, I think that I like to think. And what I heard from people is that, for some people, it helped them feel seen for their own ability, that recognition of, no, I think you can do it.
Yeah.
I think that can be done. I think the downside of it is because, again, it's that drive, that like belief that the effort should be given, that pushing, I think like the downside of it that I saw was maybe putting too much on, right? Overcommitting. And so having to learn to listen to others and to scale back and to put boundaries. And so I think I learned that in successive roles in leadership. But yeah, that drive can definitely show up.
Yeah, for sure. Right. And so, what are some concrete things you've learned to do when that voice gets a little bit louder than you want it to be? Either internally, like, I have to do this, I need to take more, or when you're thinking about that and sort of applying that to others.
I think that's why creating space is so important and having structures in place. Like in an organizational setting, having as much clarity as you can around what's your decision-making process and working in team? What is your team structure,
Right.
communication structure, so that there are pauses kind of embedded in how you're going about things. And there are opportunities. There's so much discussion about inclusive decision-making.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like almost every client I've worked with over the past 2 years has struggled at some level with decision-making and have oftentimes put forward to their teams this concept of inclusive decision making, and then haven't taken the step to really talk about what does that mean within their organization and what are the roles in decision. And so even if I held the D,
Like the decision-making authority.
yeah, and I haven't identified clearly whose role in that process is just to be informed of the decision and whose role in that process is to recommend the decision. Is there anybody that has to agree? If I haven't taken that step, I'm not going to pause to listen to other voices. I might just push through. And so I think that idea of thinking about in any kind of organizational setting, like whose voice needs to be heard and for what purpose, and are you on the same page about that? Even if you have responsibility and authority and have to take action, it doesn't mean that you do it alone, because you might need to pause and not push too hard because there may be inputs that inform what you're doing. And that clarity of, if people's role is to support or to provide consultation or information, that they're clear on that. I think that's some of it in organizational setting.
Yeah. So, I mean, how lovely would that be? It's so interesting. It's such a powerful commitment to make, to really pause and say, part of our process. So many people just struggle with that. They struggle with slowing down the process enough to make a quality decision. So the decision making might go faster, but the rework or the attempt to get the organization on board or to sort of socialize the decision with all the stakeholders takes much longer because we haven't put the time in up front. So you're saying that one of your strategies is to commit to a process that allows for that time for absorption and the time to get the right voices in the right room at the right time, that kind of thing?
Yes. And I think it's true personally too.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's about like recognizing what my own role is in it. Is it my decision to make? Is it my action to take? Am I the one that really has to drive it? And I catch myself constantly. Like a really easy example, we were going to a family wedding this weekend and we were supposed to leave at a certain time and we were like right up to the wire.
Yeah.
And I felt myself getting into this like pushing, driving, intense space,
Yeah. Because it was your responsibility.
I guess.
You felt like it was.
But I decided it was my responsibility to get us there on time. And then it was kind of a not very fun drive up there.
Right.
It was very stressful. And I made it that way because I was trying to get us there on time.
Right.
And then we're in the ceremony, and the whole ceremony was about the idea of relationships and being the journey, not the destination. It's not about the wedding, it's about the relationship before and after.
Right.
And I was sitting there thinking, man, we could have enjoyed that drive so much more, the trip up here, if I could have just slowed down. So I think it's about like, is it my decision to make? Am I responsible for everything? Just pausing
Mm-hmm.
and then giving yourself a little bit of grace when you screw it up, because we're all going to screw it up, now and again.
That's funny. We've just come full circle on that. I mean, really, we were talking at the beginning about this interesting dynamic of I'm capable of it, therefore it belongs to me, right? I'm capable, so therefore I must follow through. And I really hear you about this thing of not wanting to look back and have a regret about something, but I'm also sensing that there might be a time and a place where that drive of I'm capable, therefore I should takes you to places that you may not need to go,
Mm-hmm.
right? Takes you to places where you look back and you think, okay, well, that was an unnecessary hustle. I don't expect you to have some beautiful answer to that, but let me ask you this way. If you were to look back and tell your younger self one really important thing, Stephanie, you're going to look back, you're going to say, it's been a long road. I've learned so much. Let me give you one piece of advice, younger self, 30 years ago self, that could help you have all the success and achievement that you want with a little bit less of the obligation.
Yeah.
What would that be?
I think it would have been, could I do it over again, to focus a little bit more when I was younger on the exploration and on the fun. One of the opportunities that I regret, one of those big regrets I have, is having a placement in the Peace Corps and not going. Because I just couldn't wrap my mind around it in my early 20s, taking that time away or out. It just felt too risky and not secure and stable and forward movement enough. And how silly is that? Now at 50, looking back, like those 2 years would have flown by. It would have been such good experience. Maybe, who knows? But I think telling myself like it's okay to not be pushing forward all the time. And sometimes those, what might feel like a digression or a shift or a pivot, could be really important and really valuable. So I would have really encouraged myself. And I say that to younger people now.
Yes.
Like there's so much intensity and they feel so much pressure. And it's like, this is the time in your early 20s to just play a little bit, try stuff, experiment. Don't leave it on the table.
I'm with you 100% on that. My son just graduated from college and he literally had an opportunity to go to Europe with his best friend for several weeks. And he's like, oh, I can't. I got to get on the job hunt. I'm like, yeah, it can wait a couple weeks. Go explore. So Stephanie, thank you. This internal exploration is so helpful, I think, for so many listeners because there is this drive for more, which is good. I think having a drive for more and to make a really important contribution is something that we don't want to downplay. We don't want to dismiss. And, we don't want to run away from, but at the same time, seeking the balance, having a healthy relationship with what is informing those drivers and how that shapes the decisions you make and where you go next, I think is so, so important. So is there anything more that you'd like other sort of achievement-driven folks to understand about this journey that you've been on? You've given us so many wonderful nuggets, some of which are find yourself a coach, engage in the therapy, take some time out, listen to yourself. Is there anything else that you'd want some of those other high achievers to be thinking about to lead the more balanced path, to walk the more balanced path?
Yeah, I think it's important for people to find a way to feel confident in pursuing the thing that they want or are interested in, kind of following your interest. I'm really called to, when I'm listening to podcasts or reading things, I'm really energized by people that you can tell they're really following their interest.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing I'm playing with as I've shifted out of an organizational role and into my own consulting and coaching is really allowing myself, which is hard for me to do because it's not pushing, but like to feel really good about the progress I'm helping people make and the results I'm achieving. It's not big, it's not visible, it's not performative. Others don't recognize it, maybe. But those that I'm working with are getting what they need out of it. So it's a practice that I'm developing to like really feel like volume and visibility may not be the way to get to that more, to satisfy that drive.
Yes. You're catalyzing success by helping others
Yeah.
do better in all of their roles.
Yeah. And I really enjoy it. Like the work that I'm doing now, I routinely enjoy. And I feel like it's a different place for me to be in, to be doing what I'm doing because I enjoy it. It's impactful and it's a different drive.
So great. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. And I really appreciate this. I'm sure our listeners will as well. And of course, I wish you all the success on your journey. Thanks for being here.
Thank you, Claire. So nice to talk to you.
If you remember that feeling I described at the beginning, right? Saying yes because you can instead of because it's something you truly want to do. Here's what I heard from Stephanie today. First, just because you're capable of something doesn't mean you have to do it, but it also doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Stephanie stepped into that CEO role with her eyes wide open. She was driven by passion for the mission, a commitment to the members, and her deep value of showing up with integrity. And she has no regrets. The question isn't whether big opportunities or promotions are right or wrong. It's whether they align with what truly matters to you. Okay. Second, there's a massive difference between being driven by external shoulds, what you think you should want or what others say you should do, or what's just, quote, the next logical step, right? The difference between that and being guided by internal clarity about your values, your energy, and what really lights you up. And the only way to really know the difference is to know yourself and to slow down, to create space. Pause before you push forward. Stephanie talked about embedding those pauses in your decision-making process, like being sure that you're slowing down enough to make good decisions, and about using coaching to help you listen to yourself. And also about recognizing that every choice has consequences and just being very intentional about which consequences you can accept or which consequences you want, I guess. And third, this is ongoing work. Even after Stephanie successfully led this organization through a pandemic and a major organizational transition, she just continued to check in with herself. Like, is this still what I want? Just because I can do this for the next 20 years doesn't mean I have to or I should, right? So she made that transition into consulting and coaching, not because the CEO role was wrong, but because she was just able to tap into new needs for herself. The freedom here isn't in rejecting achievement. It's in choosing it consciously from the inside out. And she does it so well. I'm so grateful to Stephanie for her honesty about this journey and for the clarity that there's no one right answer. Her decision to become CEO was absolutely the right choice for her at the time. And then her decision to transition into coaching and consulting is the right choice for her now. Both can be true because both came from internal clarity, not external pressure. The work she's doing now is helping other leaders navigate these same questions in lots of different ways. So if you want to learn more about Stephanie's coaching and consulting work, visit sonnenshine.com. And I'll put the link in the show notes. So here's what I want you to think about. What are you doing in your life right now? Are you moving toward something because of an internal drive and genuine alignment with your values, or because of external expectation? There's no judgment either way, but there is always clarity to be gained. And if this conversation resonated with you, of course, I want to hear about it. Make sure you're connected with me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Tell me your story. And meanwhile, if you're finding value in this podcast, please come and leave me a 5-star review. It's the best way to support the podcast. Until next time, go lead the way. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. To learn more about my services and for lots of free resources and additional tools to enrich your journey, visit my website and subscribe to my newsletter at clairelaughlin.com. If you have a question about leadership, teams, or organizational culture you'd like me to address on the podcast, please reach out to me at support@clairelaughlin.com and connect with me on social channels at Claire Laughlin Consulting. Until next time, lead the way.